What's up, Digital fam? It's your boy Drew. Happy 2021. Excited for season 2 of the L's, aka Lessons Learned. Thank you to everybody that tuned in to season 1. 20 episodes that we were able to program, and excited to continue to kick this off for season 2. More importantly, I hope you guys are staying safe and creative at home. I know y'all have been huge supporters of our YouTube channel, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to these amazing episodes because these are incredible stories. But before I start, I just want to say shout out to my boy Karl Fowlkes. We got for the guest for episode 23 of the L season 2. We go obviously way back these past couple of years. But Karl, what's up, man?
I'm good,
Happy
man.
holidays. How you been?
I've been good, man. Just busy, but just navigating a tough year for sure.
Man, I mean, I think that's been obviously the common thread for everybody. We've all kind of dealt with this. Well, we really approached this year differently, but also the same, if that makes sense, in our own way. But I just wanted to say thank you, more importantly, for sharing your time during the Music Career Summit.
Sure.
That was such an interesting time because I remember trying to put that together, and I was like, oh, we're just gonna do this.
Right.
People need this, and I'm glad that what I always loved about the community is like people like you. Not only that have you supported the events that we've done, but you've always kind of lent your time when it came to like programming and stuff. So I really appreciate you.
Yeah,
You
it's a
always
real
kind of paying it
giving
forward.
platform. It's a real giving platform, and there's nothing negative about it. It's all positive. It's such a great add to the community, I think.
No, I appreciate it. But more importantly, before we go into the details, how are you and the family? Like, how's everyone? I always want to make sure I check in first.
Yeah, lucky enough, I think, in a crazy year, I have a relatively small family, and everyone's been safe and sound during these
Mhm.
times. So definitely feel lucky and blessed, but we're good.
That's all I want to hear, man. So for the audience, the community, obviously they've seen you at the Music Career Summit. What do you do for your day to day, just to give some context, and maybe some of the artists that you work with, or songwriters or producers that you work with?
Yeah, sure. I'm an entertainment attorney, and that's the gist of what I do. I also teach music business over at Drexel University and Rowan University. Some a lot of my clients are producers. That's sort of my bread and butter. But in 2019 and 2020, I definitely branched out, started working with a little bit more artists and management companies. Some of the people I work with now are guys like Section 8, who's Baby's go-to producer,
Yep,
um, Blast, who's a super fire,
from LA.
R&B
He's dope.
slash producer slash artist rapper. I'm from LA. And Corbett, who's also I would say one of the top loop makers in the country, even though he's more than that. He's a complete producer. But Corbett's done stuff with like Benny the Butcher, Big Sean, Hit Boy, so many more this year. So the people I've worked with, it's been a great year.
No, no, shout out to you. Obviously, it's and all the W's that you accomplished this year. Obviously, this is such you gotta put an asterisk to it because all the W's mean so much more to this year. Just because I think we've all had to like do extra just to achieve them. But shout out to you for that. But the purpose of the L's is really not necessarily to highlight the W's. I think we always talk about the wins, but more so not necessarily the losses, but lessons learned. And for me, like I wanted to like really take this time to like share your story, how you got started, what were those initial moments for you to like really to like, whether it was an album or an artist that really intrigued you about music. So I'm gonna start off with that. So where did you grow up? And what
Yeah.
was that first experience with music, whether it was a project or, someone playing music in your house that you really remember?
Yeah. I'm from South Jersey, like right across the bridge from Philly, like right across. So Philly radio, the Philly ecosystem was the ecosystem I grew up in. And I remember, some of those early music moments were just like Freeway and Meek
Mm-hmm.
Mill, crazy videos on YouTube, and Cosmic Kev, some of the radio hosts in Philly. Those are really the foundation. I think Philly is such a rich city in hip hop, and music in general. But I would say my earliest days and earliest memories are state property.
State
I think that
property. Yep.
definitely I think that definitely like formed a lot of my music opinion, and it also kind of just made me look at things a bit differently because it was a collective. They had there was a streetwear. Everyone had a state property shirt where I was from. It was more of a culture than it was more, even about the rap. And I think it made me start thinking bigger about
Mhm.
music even at that age.
Yeah, I mean, given that you're from South Jersey, and this is what I noticed just based off my friends from there, they've leaned more towards like music from Philadelphia
Yeah.
versus a lot of people from like northern New Jersey, who celebrate artists from New Jersey or New York, you know, and talk about that just because you have artists from New Jersey, you know, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
let's say Joe Budden, for example, like
Yeah.
it's, but for you because you were in South Jersey, you're literally like right over the bridge,
Right.
um,
Yeah, it's two
you know,
different states. It's literally it feels like two different states, North
yeah,
Jersey
yeah.
and South Jersey. And then like, I think you hit it. Like I feel like when everyone thinks about Jersey, they're not thinking about Camden, they're not really
Mhm.
so thinking about Cherry Hill. They're not even Atlantic City for the most part. And that's all the south side of Jersey. And yeah, now I really thought of myself as Philly the whole time. If you'd asked me maybe when I was 17, 16, 15, say where are you from,
Mhm.
I probably would have just said I'm from Philly or the Philly area. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Interesting to note. So you grew up the times where, just for context, state property, obviously like mixtapes, you mentioned YouTube, you know, do you remember like those initial moments where like, okay, you're consuming this music, you have these artists that you're supporting, but what was that first show that you went to that you're like, or maybe that first artist that, or artists that from your neighborhood or locally that you really were like, oh wow, I'm really into music. You have other interests, but like music is like something that really intrigues you.
Yeah, I think like I remember getting Lord Willin, like the Clips album. Like that was like the first CD I think my pops like let me get. And you know, I was always listen my mom listened to rap. I mean my dad for some
Really,
he
they
kind
were
of
cool with
listened
it.
to yeah, my mom she was fairly young, so she listened to rap for sure. So like, going to the bank or grocery store in a car, it was
Mhm.
Power 99, and stations like that. So whatever they played at that time, I was listening to. But my childhood was, I am sort of a LimeWire kid. I think that was my middle school or maybe late elementary
Mhm.
school. I think middle school though, and where you had access to everything. So I just remember, before that kind of came, and maybe before I was even that digital savvy, the first CD that my pops got me for Christmas was like Lord Willin', and it was pretty crazy. Yeah.
Definitely life changing. And just for context, for the young folks that are listening, LimeWire was the genesis of streaming.
Right. Right.
you know,
Yeah. If it wasn't for LimeWire, the streaming industry, the music, I don't know where we'd be at right now because
right.
it kind of made forced the industry to do something because
Mhm.
you were just downloading everything for free. I mean, if the industry and people stopped selling records, and it was LimeWire, it
Yeah,
was Zippy Share, it was MediaFire,
media
and then
fire. Mhm.
yeah, and all that, and then you just weren't paying for music.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, absolutely. I remember, just back in the day where we try to like create like little tapes and burn it or CDs. So I literally just like, search for songs and try to find the best version of those songs.
Right.
Like you'll get literally like 100 results.
Yeah.
And then you have to listen to it and kind of see, kind of hear like if this is like a bootleg version. Is this like we don't even know what mixing and mashing was at the time. It was just like,
Right.
all right, it sounds all right.
You know, another the thing about that era too, another person I would say that definitely influenced me was Mike Jones. Like that era
Oh,
was ridiculous. The phone number, the
yeah.
repetition in his raps, like the producers, that really sent me into like I think that was the first city that sent me into like a deep research bag. Like I wanted to know
Mm,
about Paul Wall, I wanted to know about DJ Screw, I wanted to know about
Houston.
why they sample music the way they do.
Right.
And I really went deep into that. And I used LimeWire, and I was just downloading everything from everybody in that that camp.
That camp.
Yeah.
Yeah. So shout out to H Town,
Yeah.
Paul Wall, Mike Jones, man. Yeah, no, and it's dope. I feel like during that time, like pockets of music really started to like raise its hand, whether it was from Houston, because I think music was always kind of like centered around New York, especially hip hop.
Right.
So it was probably pretty cool, like circa, I don't know, what is this, 2007, 2006, um, for the just for the folks that are listening and watching, and then also like Atlanta, obviously, really starting like to like make a statement with, Outkast, Ti, Jeezy, you
Yeah.
know. So it's really cool like how like music kind of evolved during that time,
Yeah.
and expanded.
Yeah. For
So
sure.
so for you, obviously you're listening to these artists from Philly. Do you remember, going to that first show? Did you go to was your first show in Philly, or was it in Jersey?
I don't think I went to a concert until I was at St. John's for undergrad. I just really wasn't that
Gotcha.
like, yeah, I don't think I was too interested. I was definitely a sports person. Like, I thought I'd be at the same position,
Gotcha.
be working in sports, not music. I probably
Mm,
thought I was going to the league at that point. I was still playing, YMCA ball every day. So I don't think I never wanted to really go to any concert or show. And even till this day, I'll be honest with you, I'm not like the show guy. Like I actually
gotcha.
think I think shows are weird because like you get to hear someone, at least in the hip hop genre, you get to hear someone sound worse and not really try too hard,
Right, right.
and around a bunch of people that are just that crazy. So it's like, it's a weird environment for me. I'm not the biggest concert guy.
No, no, that's important to note. And I think for you, like, I wanted to point out to the young professionals, like you mentioned your interest in sports initially, right? And kind of like your road into like law school. Like, talk about that, just because you weren't necessarily focused on music, but a lot of folks when they study or like they go to college, they're still figuring it out, but their path to music is like a transition, or something like that segues them there. But for you, you love sports. I know you play ball. I see those highlight clips. So you post them, I was like, oh man, if I play on this team, like I gotta be the 3-and-D guy. I was gonna stay in the corner. But yeah, what was that like, especially like going to school? Like, you went to St. John's. Obviously St. John's, people always associate St. John's with J. Cole.
Mhm.
um like, what was that experience like? Because you weren't necessarily focused on music, you were focused on sports.
Yeah, no, I was definitely. Once I got into high school, I definitely was starting to get infatuated with like, maybe art in general. I wanted to be an architect for the longest time. Like I literally, used to draw house plans, use AutoCAD, all the programs, like take all the coursework in high school I could to do that. And a lot of the universities I was down to, there were engineering schools. So I really wanted
Mm,
to go, really my mind started shifting a little bit toward design and like art. And I think towards the end of my high school career and early college, I started to dabble more in the culture and things like that. But it was still sort of like a side project. I liked writing about stuff. I remember running a website and having a bunch of writers from around the world. I had a writer in China and other stuff, and it was called A Global Culture, and we probably had,
wow.
in our peak, we probably had like 15,000 monthly like page views, and it was all random stuff.
Crazy.
Like I would be, getting stuff like from Banksy does a shoot, then I would share it, and it was kind of just like an assortment of stuff, and then like maybe a house from like Art Design that I like. I would put that up, and then like a rap song that it was that era where everyone was trying to like
Yeah.
put these things together that make people
Yeah.
fit. Um,
Yeah.
so, at that time I was really starting to dig deep into that stuff. And it was also like my junior or senior high school was like the come up, maybe the warm up. And I remember seeing, J. Cole, and once I chose St. John's, that sort of definitely became something I didn't stop telling people about. Like, yo, who went to say, who's going to say, I'm going to St. John's, who graduated from there. So yeah, so and then when I got to St. John's, that's where I went to undergrad, not law school. St. John's, I think, being in New York City, going from
Hmm.
like small South Jersey where no one thinks they can do anything to like
Hmm.
New York City and being close and internships and stuff like that. It kind of just I don't. My mom said like I didn't even talk like my first month or two at college. Like, they didn't even hear from me. I was just like so, and
You're a
I was just
sponge.
taking trains to Soho and just sitting there like, yo, this is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's super important. I think for a lot of young folks are in still in school or, you know, the idea of like kind of leaving your hometown and, things that you're comfortable with and then going to a big city where, you're constantly just engaged and just like stimulated by things, right? To your point, traveling to Soho, which is like a cultural hub,
Right.
which is super, super important. But I also want to note too, like the fact that you started your own website during this blog era
Right.
where like everyone was trying to figure out like just like what their voice was, right? But I think that's dope because I remember Zanga was a thing at one point,
Yeah.
MySpace obviously,
Yeah.
and then from the hip hop side, like Two Dope Boys, Nah Right, like becoming like these big like blog, you know, pieces, but really more so points of discovery for music. Um,
And it literally just helped me sort of get ahead of maybe like coding and design. Like I'm not the greatest coder now, but like I'm not lost in
right.
the sauce like at all. Like I design my own website now. And a lot of that comes back from, those days just being curious.
Yeah, no, I think that's super important to note, like especially for the folks that if you have an idea, like, and given the resources that we have now with YouTube and all the things of that nature, like, why wait? Don't ask for permission, just do it.
3,000.
you
And,
know,
and I think you should own as many things possible early on before you sort of delegate or delegate tasks or delegate. You're going to have to delegate. I think that like learning how to delegate is really the key to scaling. But
mhm,
early on, I think you need to know what these processes look like so you even know how to delegate and know what to delegate. So like early on, try your hand at like trying to make your website look the way it should look, and
mhm,
try to run your email campaigns and stuff like that, and before you just give that away.
right. I think that's super important, a lesson learned in itself, just because I think we often kind of pigeonhole ourselves to one thing and we want to just study it. And don't get me wrong, we want to spend 10,000 hours to like really perfect our craft, but I think it's important to test different things. And to your point, you don't necessarily have to be the expert at it, but you should be able to like understand the process and also speak that language.
Right.
So when you ask for something, that it takes X hours to do. So there's expectations there, you
Yep.
know. I think that's super important to note for the folks that are listening that
Yep.
learn how to delegate. So fast forward, so you're in school, obviously St. John's, J. Cole, telling all your friends
Yeah.
that you're going to school with J. Cole. But what was that kind of transition? Because what did you study in college, and what was that like pivot to like study law?
Yeah, no, I was a whack job, man. Like I remember I know I said I wanted to be an architect earlier, and I
Yeah.
really and I was so in like, and that's how my head. If I'm in something, I'm like in it. And then it was a weird time in America, and I'm like, you know what, and I already had my website, and I was like, yo, I want to study journalism. I want to tell stories. I don't want to do like reporting. I want to do like actual opinionated, just long form pieces.
Hmm.
And initially, I thought I wanted to go to like, Arabic countries, maybe Battlefield. I took a couple years of Arabic. Like I really
Wow.
thought maybe that. Yeah, it's like a scatter. I've been a scatterbrain for a long time. And yeah, so I was in it was journalism, and I was still working on my website, putting out content, but I was starting to trying to start to pivot to something a bit more serious, maybe tell more serious stories.
Hmm.
But somewhere along the line, when I was at St. John's, I was hooping, all the time, still going to the parties, still going down to Soho and hanging out, and not missing a beat from that point where I was just like, man, I kind of, and even just like understanding the influence that culture has, as stupid as that
Right.
is, maybe, like, just understanding that like the people over here probably have the most influence. Like whether they should, that's another question. But
Right. Right.
facts are the facts. So I think at some point, I was like, you know what, I want to lean into the things I really love doing. Like I said, I
Mm,
watch, I literally watch every basketball game that's known to man. Like I'll get off this and, get some food and watch the Sixers and, all that sort of stuff. And I watch every St.
yeah,
John's game. Like, I spend money on the program. So I was just like, man, let me do stuff I want to do. So,
right.
at that point, somewhere along my journey as St. John's, it's like, I need an internship. I want to go out there and start working. So did a semester with the Knicks, and then I also did a semester with the
Mm,
Nets. And
wow.
the Nets, it was the first year that they moved to Brooklyn. So I was over there in the Barclays Center, Metro Tech, J Street, where the corporate offices are. And I was doing marketing at both jobs. I really didn't have any marketing background or anything like
Hmm.
that, other than maybe my website. And
Yeah.
um, those were like, those are my first moments in entertainment, just those internships.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I mean, you give yourself a lot of credit because, you built your own website and you had 15,000
Yeah.
daily
Yeah.
visitors. That's a lot. That says a lot. I mean, the fact that, and the point I'm making, I think, is a lesson learned too for a lot of folks. Like, just create your things as you go into like these job opportunities. Like, you can add value there, right?
Yeah.
You know,
I sold
from
that. Yeah,
from
for
that,
sure. Yep. Yep. I sold that.
position yourself versus this. Because is that how you got your internship? Because a lot of folks are like, oh, how do I get my first internship? How did you position yourself to get that internship?
I think there's always like a bit of luck. Like maybe, I think I just went to like the internship office and was like,
Hmm.
yo, I really want an internship in sports. And like,
Right.
they're like, yo, do you have like, what's your background? Like maybe I think I coached basketball too. And, I was just selling, experiences like that. And at that time, let's be honest, like, internships have always been important, but they seem to be getting more of a regular thing as we get older. Like, I don't think
Hmm.
kids 10, 15 years ago were as focused on internships as they are now. Like now, like,
Right.
you're almost getting to college and like the first thing a lot of these kids, especially at these bigger universities, is like, I need an internship. And, so I was still in a way ahead of the curve, even though maybe I was a junior
Hmm.
or senior.
Hmm.
But there were, yeah, no one had real work experience. So I think you just sold whatever your interests were and tried to write that on a resume and yeah, and get that position. Yep.
Yeah, I know. I think for the folks that are listening, just go get it. It doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
So the first step is applying, right? And the fact that you were able to get the next position, and then I'm sure leverage that to get the next opportunity.
Right.
Like, they go hand in hand.
Yep.
Um, so after these internships, you're doing multiple things. You're studying Arabic. You have this
Right.
you have all these things. You're watching St. John's games, watching, uh, supporting, obviously working at the Nets, but watching for Sixers games.
Right.
Um, what what was that kind of like transition? Because you're also mentioned about your kind of like curiosity to like, focus on journalism, which actually now makes sense given, the Medium articles I've read.
Right.
So I was like, this guy knows how to write.
Right.
So
Thank you,
now it
man.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, where was that transition to like actually, want to go to law school? Because and I think this is important to note, like you're trying different things and trying to find your footing, but you know that sports is your love, and you love sports and you love writing.
Right. I think eventually at some point, the summer before senior year, I'm thinking more. All right, clearly I want to work in sports and entertainment, but I don't want to do marketing. I'm not. It's not as natural to me. I don't think, especially maybe in an organized setting. And I just didn't want to do anything else. So I was like,
Mhm.
I think I like arguing and I think I like writing. And I want to make an impact. And I think lawyers just have that ability to come in and make change. That's at least what I thought, right? And so I started. studying for the LSAT. Like, and no one really, like, I really wasn't telling you. I was in between parties, you know, it wasn't like I wasn't like, yeah, I wasn't that kid in the library or anything like that.
Right.
But, you know, I just started plugging away and then, you know, paid for the exam and took it and did fairly well and just wrote a good statement and sent it out to all the law schools that I thought I wanted to go to that had sports and entertainment programs, you know,
Mm.
Villanova, Miami, um, Cardozo in New York, you know, Madden, and just sent them all around. And I got into most and got pretty good scholarships at most. And you know, I decided to sort of go back home, at least the home region, and go to
Mhm.
Villanova for law school. And that's kind of when there indirectly, that's when music became my focus.
Yeah, no, I love to hear that, and I think the fact that you said that you wrote that statement. I always like to say that there's things that kind of lead up to like those moments or inflection points. I mean, I'm not saying this was a contributor, but maybe because you were a writer, you wrote stuff, you were passionate about the things that you wanted to highlight within your website, helped you write and just kind of to get there.
Yeah,
I mean, you
I
didn't
think
even
you're
know.
hitting it on a nail. I think everything you've done up to this point, you know, in your life, and you know, has value. I think you got to find that value and you got to focus on that value. And you know, I think a lot of people view their experiences a bit negatively or as if they didn't do anything. But you know, you could pull from almost anything you've ever done in your life in a positive way. And I'm almost sure that you know maybe some of the experiences I sold in that statement made all the difference in regards to getting into law school and then earning some money and some scholarship, you know, as well. So I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, no, definitely lessons learned in that. So, all right, so this is your music
Yeah.
career, right? So you're in Villanova, obviously strong basketball program,
Right.
collegiately. Um,
Yeah.
so what was that? Was there a internship for you, or was there an opportunity for you to like find like a role model or a mentor like you could work with? What was like that kind of segue? Because I always like to talk about people that first transition, how you got started.
Yeah.
So what was that for
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. For me, it was very passive. Like once again, I feel like it's a lot. It's not for. I think when you're just doing stuff and you're active and you keep
Hmm.
keeping a good attitude, I think a lot of good things just kind of happen. And it wasn't an internship, it wasn't a mentor or anything like that. It kind of went back to like, I guess my NYC days of, you know,
Hmm.
just meeting people, hanging out, and you know, one of my buddy, who you know I got kind of close with, was really focused on music. He was like, all right, man, my head's in music, and you know, right almost out of college. I think we didn't even go to the same university, but we were both attending school in the city. You know, he got a job, you know, as an A&R at RCA.
Hmm.
And you know, through that, you know, he started managing artists and, you know, I kind of became sort of like a business advisor, helper. And you know, he started coming to me for sort of like, you know, guidance on some things. And that was really my entrance. That was my introduction. It doesn't even get deeper than that.
Hmm.
And you know, from there, um, you know, just meeting people through that experience and continuing to learn more, read books, all that other stuff. Music caught my attention rather quickly, and it became something I understood, and I didn't
Hmm.
realize how much I understood it until I was in it. And I was like, man, this you know, the concepts, the contracts, it all comes natural. Um, you know, this is probably where I'll start my career.
Yeah, no, I love to hear that. Just
Yeah.
because going back to your point about because people think like, oh, I'm in Soho, I'm wasting time, I'm hanging out with my friends, but the pulse of the things that we do, especially in music, are driven by culture. And I think, to your point, the fact that a lot of people think that they need to work at a label or work at a management company to like start. In your case, you started with your friend,
Right.
right? And I think we always have to look at like our left and right and see who around us does music. So
Yeah, and through that experience, I got direct contact to artists who have big records, artists who, and producers and songwriters and other people through that
mhm,
experience in the studio, watching them create, you know, just building that notoriety, getting in their ear early, like, yo, I'm gonna be that lawyer. I'm telling you, I was in
yeah.
law school. You know, I wasn't misappropriating. But they all knew my journey. They knew where I came from and
Mhm.
what I was about to do, and I didn't let them forget. And that was always sort of my thing. Like, yo, I'm the lawyer. I'm going to be that. Watch this. And eventually it kind of happened. And, I think that the toughest part was um, all my internships in law school really weren't music or even
Mhm.
public at all. I worked for the attorney general's office, I think, one
Mhm.
summer, and then the MTA. That was fun, right? Doing legal. I was their legal intern for one summer.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it wasn't all my music stuff was just out of office and stuff.
Mhm.
So it kind of became tough, like after college, after law school, and they were like, when maybe I was applying to music jobs at that time, they were like, well, yeah, I see you have, some management company experience, and but you never really, do you even like, music law? And it was kind of tough to quantify.
Mhm.
So I didn't get that. I think this is another thing that I want to stress. I didn't get that music opportunity directly out of college, and it didn't dissuade me at all.
Mm.
I thought it was a part of the process, and it also gave me the guts and fortitude, I think, to kick the door down.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah. No, that's huge to note. One that, you know, like your first job out of college isn't necessarily going to be the music job that you want.
Right.
Um, but you're already doing it. I think a lot of folks, disqualify themselves like, oh, I work for a management company. I'm like, well, you're doing music stuff,
Right.
right? You music related stuff. So give yourself credit, and um, like I said, I think I always try to stress this that, focus on your personal brand coming into a situation. Sometimes companies that don't have the foresight will only look at people based off like what they've done from a work standpoint. But like,
Facts.
hey, how are you contributing to culture? Like, who
Yeah.
do you know? Like, how are you adding value? And at least for me, like those are the things that are important. You
Yeah.
know,
And
but
I
I
think
just want to
internet
stress that.
portfolios are way more important now, even than they were maybe 6, 7 years ago. It was almost
Hmm.
maybe a turnoff, I think, in some regards to like be big, like
Hmm.
have a personality or even have a following or know people necessary.
Hmm.
I think it was kind of a like, what are you trying to do thing. But I think now there's actually real value to like people who have strong
Yeah.
digital presence.
Right. No,
Yeah.
I agree. For me, like I'd rather hear a story where, not necessarily where you worked at like an internship, but more so hear about the story that you created a website, you had 15,000
Yeah.
daily visitors.
Right.
For me, that's actually value
Yep.
because you're doing something that can actually contribute to the company
Yep.
versus, oh, I worked at this place, but I didn't necessarily work on anything like that was impactful,
Yep.
you know? So I just want to stress that for the folks that are listening, especially the young music professionals, make sure to bet on yourself. So you kick down the door.
Right.
You're like, all right, well, I'm here. And how did that was obviously a lesson learned in itself, but like, how did you position yourself? And, because I always try to stress this, like, how did you create your voice and add value, for your position?
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely a journey, and it kind of happened. It was on and offline. Like I think a lot of people saw the online stuff, but
Hmm.
I already had a bunch of music connections. I already had a bunch of sport connections and culture connections just from being outside my house.
Hmm.
So I always avail myself to the market, and even before I opened my law firm, I was at
Hmm.
Bloomberg. I used to have people in. There was real visibility for me in that position,
Hmm.
and people seem to respect it.
Hmm.
So I was able to sort of parlay that attention and to sort of maybe gain some early respect and some seed
Hmm.
trust, maybe that would have been tough to get. And towards the end of that year, I left Bloomberg. I just felt like it was just time for me to sort of build out what I wanted to build out, and um, you know
Hmm.
started with the websites, things that I was already good at, and started digitally. Really just
Full
serving a
circle.
community. Yeah, just serving a community that I felt like that was underserved from an education standpoint,
Hmm.
and underserved from a representation or consulting standpoint. And just started with like I didn't jump into big clients or anything like that.
Mm.
I started with artists who were small. I did a lot of, I probably did 50 workshops, man, like in a span of a year and a half,
Really?
like on and offline.
Wow.
And, yeah, just work and and just get building relationships with artists who weren't the biggest or didn't have the biggest following. And I think
Hmm.
that was a great way.
Hmm.
My learning was scaled, and even me learning as a lawyer and a
Hmm.
professional, and to a point where I was able to sort of parlay everything I was doing into bigger opportunities and working with bigger clients. And but
Hmm.
even then, I could say, at this point, I have some bigger clients. I'm in music with some heavy resumes, and
Hmm.
um, there's still so much left to accomplish and so much left to establish yourself. Like it's never over. I think people get some early success.
Hmm.
Professionally, I would say 2020 was a success. I was able to
Yeah.
hire my first full-time employee. You
Let's
know,
go.
yeah, right.
Scale.
Yeah, I was able to hire like my full-time employee with a very competitive salary, and I was able to sort of get out there and get good office space. I was able
Love
to,
that.
I probably done 15, 20 deals on the publishing and recorded music side this year alone. And, so professionally it was a good year, but, I think we're all still trying to figure out what this is and how we can, I'm not here just to like be a part of the machine. I'm here to
Hmm.
disrupt the machine and continue to, call things out that I don't like, and make things
Hmm.
better.
Yeah. N- I mean, a lot of points that you made earlier, kind of like the purpose, right? You talked about investing your time and developing artists and finding an opportunity to add value to them. Um, I think that's super important to note because you didn't necessarily wait for like a law firm to hire you to do that. This is something you're already passionate about, and
Right.
I think I want to stress that because I think a lot of people when they look at music and the roles and positions, they look at like the obvious, right? You go to shows, you're with artists, there's glamour, but at the end of the day, like I think the people that really are able to shift and move culture are the ones that they don't think about necessarily just the paycheck. They think about their why, and for you, your why were the artists. You
Mhm.
wanted to help them and kind of pay it forward, and I feel the same way about the digitalog as well. So I just wanted to point that out, just because that's super important for like a lot of young music professionals, because they may want to get a title position or say they worked here and there, but like but what's going to like drive you every day, because the
You,
work is hard.
you
It's not easy.
realize people are almost jealous of you when they can almost feel you understand your why. Like, I think everyone gets attracted to that sexy position, but you could talk to a lot of people with great positions and great titles, I would say, at companies that you might have always wanted to work for. And those things don't last forever. There's always like, when you leave that building, and you're talking to your family and you're sort of by yourself in your thoughts. Um, you're probably, hopefully, if you're a curious person, you're saying, how can I do more, how can I impact, and there's always ways you can do that. So yeah, it's not the title. It's like not fall in love with a piece of paper. It's a mindset thing, and I think you can really, really start making an impact once you realize that you can't chase the titles. Like, who cares?
Right.
Yeah.
No, 100%. I want to state that again. I've stated this in multiple conversations. The people that matter don't care where you work and what your title is. They care about you, Karl. They
Yeah.
care about me,
Yeah.
and this goes back to show about, the value of relationships, because just to kind of backtrack a bit, you talked about, the way that you invested time with your friends in SOB, I mean, in Soho, and like,
Yeah.
being part of culture, and that's how that started. And those kind of springboard opportunities as well for you. Um, and if you don't value those things, you don't realize how all those things kind of come full circle, because
Yeah. I
no, you were
remember
saying.
telling my dad, like, yo, I'm out, or my family, like, hey, I'm going to New York this weekend, like, or whatever. And um, they thought I was just partying. I did party a lot.
Right,
I'm not
right.
like I didn't.
Yeah.
But there was always sort of a party with intention, or like,
Hmm.
it was always there's a reason why I'm here, and there's, it's sort of FaceTime, and I almost knew, 4 years later, I'd be looking back, and some of these people I was with or saw or met would be, in positions they're in, and they might be doing what they're doing, and the experience itself would
Hmm.
make me a bit more experienced as a person. So I just fit, sometimes there's no dollar amount, and there's no you can't quantify the experience. But
Hmm.
I was watching a Jay-Z clip today, and he was just talking about how like sometimes you just have to know what you're doing it is what you should be doing,
Hmm.
and live with those results.
Yeah, no, no, for sure. I mean, I love that. I love that that comes full circle because even for me, like I was talking to my friend, Jeff Donna. He used to be part of a rap group, but we used to like cross paths because he would be at rooftop parties. We'd be in Soho.
Right.
Like, I think the time that you spend outside the building is so much more important. Just as for like the young folks that obviously pre-COVID, post-COVID, um, you know, like don't get caught up in just like working there at whatever position you have.
Yeah.
Like make sure you're building genuine relationships with people outside, like you're going to the places because we said this earlier, culture is what drives music. Like, conversation, that the people that are like really moving and impacting things are not silly working in at a desk all day, you
Yeah.
know,
You never
so
know who you need to call, and that's another thing is like, you want to be a dynamic person, like literally. I mean, like dynamic people are, someone who doesn't just do what their job description might say. It's like, all right, this stuff is
mhm,
good. You got to be able to do that, but you know, what if you're in a room and people are talking about ideas, and an athlete or an agent, and that maybe you know someone else at a nightclub or an event, and you could just provide so much other value by being a dynamic person. And don't sell yourself short on that. I don't think you should ever dim your light.
mhm.
I think for a while I tried to. I think law school kind of is one of those environments where shirt and tie, bland, you know, don't do too much. That's the environment. And I realized I wasn't going to be a dynamic attorney following that advice.
Yeah, no, that's a great lesson learned. Make sure you're dynamic. Make sure you're open minded outside of things you're already doing, and just being able to add value when like I said, being able to think out of the box. And I want to kind of like go back and kind of sum up, you're just based off the story that you shared. I mean, one, growing up in South Jersey, claiming Philly, um, being obviously a fan of just state property, artists like Meek Mill, um, really growing up in the obviously the early 2000s, like kind of hip hop era, and then also during that time, for you, your experience in music was very different, right? You consume music through LimeWire. You were these are things that people obviously don't recognize now, but I just want to create some context around that. But music wasn't necessarily your passion. I mean, you love sports, you love basketball. You talked about, even with basketball, you started your own website, where you collaborated with people from different countries,
Yeah.
which, I wouldn't necessarily think about in high school, but you were able to do it. You built the website, and this was like the dawn of like the digital era, like with blogs and then you had like 15,000 daily visitors where you wrote about architecture and just music and stuff like that, which is super important. And I think it's important to also know too, like your interest in different things. Like initially you talked about architecture, right?
Mm.
But how that kind of like shifted, but because you were you remember listening to the warm up, you found interest in going to St. John's,
Right.
um, inspired by J. Cole. So you're in St. John's, obviously partying, you're in New York City, and you talked about that first month where your parents didn't hear from you, and because you were just like naturally curious about the city itself. um, and then obviously we talked about internships, right? Because you love sports, you just know, like as you're partying, you're in New York City, you're just trying to find like the things that make you happy, right? And then sports was that. Like you mentioned that you didn't necessarily miss any games, you St. John's games, you invested in the program. And I think these are important things to note, because as you're trying to figure out like what's important to you, you have to test these different things out, but they all kind of come back full circle. So you found that internship. You mentioned the Knicks. You mentioned the Nets. And then eventually, there was that interest with you where, there was an opportunity for you to take the LSATs. You're still partying. You said you passed, but because of your experience doing the writing on the website, you mentioned that it all kind of came back full circle again, where now you got an opportunity to go to Villanova,
Yeah.
which is really dope. And again, you're saying like just doing the right things and finding that moment. And for you, the fact that you were, because you spent that time going to New York City, the fact that you spent weekends hanging out with people, now you have a friend who is passionate about music and is like, hey, Karl, come for the ride. Law. How can you help and contribute? And you mentioned that was kind of like your start, right? Which is really dope. And kind of fast forward, you mentioned about kind of trying to find your footing, but you didn't necessarily get that first job right after college, but you were so focused on the giving back, and because you were passionate about artists, you did all these, like, you did 50 workshops, and that allowed you to like really create opportunities, but I'm sure it brought more opportunities to this day. And I just want to sum that up
Yeah.
because that
It was
was
it was
that was
accurate.
really cool. That was
Yeah.
really dope. And like, the reason I do that is because every journey is different.
Yeah.
But the things that you do all add up to a certain point. And you just have to, just to your point earlier, I think one lesson learned that I always want to just stress is that, don't look at those experiences as things that have set you back, but ways to either propel you forward.
Yeah.
And in your case, you're able to do that. But before we wrap up, what is one lesson learned, one L? We talked about a lot because there are so many gems in your journey that you want to kind of share to the community.
One L. Yeah, no, I think just getting some swimming with the sharks of the music business. There was a time where, I had been working with a client for a long time, and then, right when the time we were going to do a deal, or a good amount of time, I don't know what long is for the most, but it was a good amount of time we were working together, locking in.
Mm,
And right when the time to do a bigger deal, came into the picture, he kind of dumped me for, another attorney. And then and
mm,
that was that at that time it was, it felt devastating, right? It was like,
mm,
like you, is this always going to happen?
mm,
Is this the I'm a young black. I look, I part of it maybe might be the way I look. It just really challenges a lot of you and whether you should be here and whether you could. But I think in hindsight,
validation.
yeah, validation. So that was a massive L, and you learn to deal with that, and you use it. I don't think it was one of those things where I took it. I could say now I took it
Mm,
too personally, but I didn't overreact. I think those moments you realize, like, man, you got to keep going harder. You're not where you need to be. Your presence, and the things you're doing, it isn't undeniable. But at the same time, you have to also realize sometimes it's not about any of that. It's just the way things go sometimes.
mhm.
And you got to learn to move forward and do good stuff. Yeah. So that was a massive L.
Huge. 2 points I want to note, not to get caught up in that moment, because obviously you want to deal with it, and approach it, but not hoard that, just basically just hold that moment to the things that you want to do moving forward. So if anything, that would probably drive you, inspire you. So super super important to know, nothing comes easy, and there's definitely two sides of the business. But the good thing is that there's the side of the business which I really love, which is people like you, the people like from the community that they care about not just the music but the actual people.
Right.
So I just want to say thank you, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking time for this episode. It's been I've been meaning to do this for a minute, but I'm glad that even despite the pandemic, we were able to do this virtually. Um, for the audience and the community, make sure to check out Karl's socials. I'm going to make sure it's going to be in the description. Is there anything you want to plug in before we wrap up?
Just a couple things I'm working on in Q1 that should be available. Q1 2021. One is an app called the Melody app that I'm helping with a very strong team.
Dope.
It's a loop app, and it's an easier way for creators and sound designers to find loops. But it doesn't cut them out. I think there's been some other
Mm-hmm.
competitors out there, and you can get those royalty-free apps, loops. Our process is just as easy. It's a swipe left, swipe right. You listen to the melody,
Mm-hmm.
and you get to download it, and it's just a 10% publishing share, and it's a very very simple process. So you'll be seeing me put out a lot of material around that. And then secondly, I have a book coming to market called Artists or Startups, and it's really just about empowering artists to operate more like companies. The biggest
Mm-hmm.
issue I've seen artists have problems with is operationalizing, literally
Mm-hmm.
developing the right processes and systems in place for them to have sustained long-term success. This
Mm-hmm.
book, I don't go too high level with it. I get into
Mm-hmm.
the weeds about just some of the things that you can do to help you achieve long-term success as a creative.
Huge. So talk about adding value and bringing back the culture. The Melody app, make sure to check out the Melody app.
Yeah.
We'll make sure we put a link in the description. And also once you launch your book, Artists or Startups, right? Super important just because we live in an age where resources are so available, but being able to your point, operate to create like a system and structure and for artists are super key to like really build them as brands and not just like artists. So I love that. But Karl, appreciate your time. Digital Art community. Appreciate you tuning in to episode 23 of the LZK Lesson Learns with my boy Karl. Make sure to follow him and make sure to support him on socials as well. So stay tuned for the next episode. Talk soon. Peace.